In this video, I'm going to show you how to answer the various continuous writing tasks that can come up in the 11+ CSSE papers. And at the end, I'll show you how to avoid an incredibly common mistake that students make when answering a question type that comes up an awful lot in the exam. CSSE, creative writing, represents 25% of the paper's full marks. That's 30 marks in total. And there's two questions, one for 15 marks and the other one for 15 marks. And they're usually different styles of task. In this video, we're first going to talk about the different things that examiners are going to be looking for in a good answer. And then we're going to run through some examples of different types of questions that can come up and some exemplar answers that can hopefully point you in the right direction towards that pass. I have often found that running through exemplars is the ideal way to improve creative writing, as it gives the student an idea of what to expect. So let's get into it. First of all, there are some basic things that the examiner is looking for. The examiner is looking for clear and original writing. Second, they're looking for something that is grammatical. So we want secure tenses and correct punctuation. Structure. So there needs to be a sense of direction in your writing. Connectives need to be used appropriately, and paragraphs need to be accurate. And you need varied sentence structures. You also need ambitious vocabulary. Accurate spelling for all basic vocabulary too. So don't be afraid of using some more difficult words, but try to spell most of the easy things correctly, and make sure that you proofread your work carefully and see if there's anything that you can pick out after you've written something, just to catch those little tiny mistakes here and there. And then also you need good spelling and punctuation. So that's kind of connected to vocabulary. So you need varied punctuation, and it needs to be used creatively, whatever that means, and accurately. Let's go into our first example. So you could be asked to give a vivid description, and that could be of a place, person, or object. So let's look at this question here. Describe your favourite place in detail. Let's read through the example first, the exemplar answer, and from that we'll be able to work out what we need in our good description. So let's read this out. My garden is quaint, a place of solitude and tranquility. The grass surrounding me is lush, bouncy, and feels cool underfoot. Although it is often a quiet place, sometimes the call of small nesting birds fills the air, and during summer, pollinating insects fill the air with their characteristic drone. My father sometimes breaks the peace by ripping through the grass with his mower, but it's all worth it afterwards, as the lawn is neat and tidy. Afterwards, the garden becomes a perfect place for my brother and I to play football. We often use the pots as goalposts, inciting the ire of our mother. The garden is a source of peace and calm for all the family, but it is also a source of joy for all. So that was just a little example that I wrote out. Let's look at what makes this such a good answer. So if we think about it this way, it starts out, my garden is quaint, a place of solitude and tranquility. Off the mark, you got some good vocabulary. You got quaint, solitude, tranquility. These are difficult words. It's good to throw in some difficult words as long as you know how to use them. The grass surrounding me is lush, bouncy, and it's even got a dash actually. So we've got a little dash in there, so we've got some sophisticated punctuation. Punctuation used creatively. The grass surrounding me is lush, bouncy, and feels cool underfoot. We've got a group of three there. Nice little technique. Although it is often a quiet place, sometimes the call of small nesting birds fills the air. And during summer, pollinating insects fill the air with their characteristic drone. Again, we've got some more difficult vocabulary, and also we've got some sound imagery. So it's good to have loads of different types of imagery, so use your senses when you're describing something. It's also good to visualize the place, person or object as clearly as you can to give a bit more insight into it and make your answer a bit more creative. My father sometimes breaks the peace by ripping through the grass with his mower. And there you've got a nice change in tone, a different paragraph there, so you've got a bit of a structural element, change of focus. But it's all worth it afterwards, as the lawn is neat and tidy. Afterwards, so here I'm using some adverbials, which is nice to have, some fronted adverbials. So you've got time ones like afterwards, at the moment, that kind of thing. The garden becomes a perfect place for my brother and I to play football. So that's a bit of personal insight there, which is a nice thing to have. And that's why we often suggest write about things that you know about. That provides the reader with a bit more context, allows you to personalize your writing a bit more, and it's also going to be something that you're comfortable with. So I'm not describing some alien landscape that I've never been to before. I'm describing something very, very much on my mind. I can easily recall it. And in an exam situation, you've got to be careful about veering off into other things that aren't something that you've experienced. Again, we've got a bit of creativity there. So we often use the pots as goalposts, inciting the eye of our mother, so we've got a bit of alliteration, bit more complex vocabulary. The garden is a source of peace and calm for all the family. We've got a bit of figurative language, source of peace and calm, but it is also a source of joy for all. And something that binds together a lot of these examples is there is a concluding sentence that sort of binds the whole thing together. So structurally, that's quite a nice thing to have in your writing. So following on from that, we're going to go into something very different now. We're going to look at personal ideals. Something that you should do as a candidate for 11 plus, and as parents raising a child who's going for the 11 plus, is encourage a bit of debate, thinking about the future. What are your hopes, dreams, aspirations, that kind of stuff. That kind of goes beyond the exam and exam skills and English. That's more about personal development. Here's a question that sort of tackles that. If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be? I remember a child might have limited views on that, might not have as much insight as an adult, or certainly wouldn't. But it's a good idea to sort of encourage a child to think about those wider issues so they can deal with these kinds of question types. Let's read the exemplar through first, just to get an idea of what is required. So, if I could change one thing about the world, I would want to end world hunger. It's hard to believe that in a world with so much wealth and abundance, there are still millions of people who do not have enough to eat. Hunger not only causes suffering, but also holds people back from reaching their full potential. By ensuring that everyone has access to nutritious food, we can make the world a much better place for everyone. No one should have to go to bed hungry. So, what's good about this answer? There are probably things that can be improved, but first of all, I start with the topic sentence. So I nicely answer the question in one sentence at the top. That's something that I'd encourage whenever you give your opinion or something like that, or you have something evaluative. Try and answer the question as quickly as you can. It's hard to believe. So we've got a bit of paragraphing here. So we've got our reasons here in this paragraph, and we've got a little conclusion here. So we've got a well-structured piece of writing. It's hard to believe that in a world with so much wealth and abundance, so we've got the word abundance is a bit more sophisticated vocabulary there, they like that. There are still millions of people who do not have enough to eat. It's a bit thought-provoking, that sentence. Hunger not only causes suffering, but holds people back from reaching their full potential. That's sort of a deeper idea, and remember, you get judged on how deep your ideas are. By ensuring that everyone has access to nutritious food, again, we've got use of the word nutritious, so it's a bit more advanced than you might expect for a 10 or 11-year-old. We can make the world a much better place for everyone. No one should have to go to bed hungry. I think that sentence is an emotive hook that you've got at the end, which makes someone thought. It's a thought-provoking last sentence. So that's a nice thing to have in your piece of writing. Let's move on to the next section. So this is related to that point. I just thought it was worthy of putting into a different section because it's a bit less idealistic. Expressing an opinion about something. Do you think students should receive homework over the weekend? That might be something that you've got an opinion about if you're a student. You might not like receiving homework. Well, try and justify it. But make sure that you have a little bit of balance in your answer. So you've got to say, on the one hand, you've got this issue or you've got this opinion, but then there are other people who consider something else. Considering other people's perspectives is actually really, really good for showing your awareness about the world. So let me read this out. I believe receiving homework over the weekend is usually a brilliant idea, as it is crucial to review what you have done during the week. I usually spend around an hour on Saturday and an hour on Sunday on my homework, and it doesn't feel particularly taxing. Although some people may have packed weekends, one of my friends comes to mind in particular. Most children have the time to complete a little of the homework. If a child has a lot of things to do at the weekend, it's possible that a parent can contact the teacher directly to let them know that it might be difficult to complete all the work. Overall, it seems fair that students ought to have homework over the weekend unless there are extenuating circumstances which prevent its completion. I'm not necessarily expecting a child to write something like that. Let's look at some of the things that make this an effective answer. I start with my opinion. So I believe that receiving homework over the weekend is usually a brilliant idea. So that sums up what I think about this question. I've answered the question. Topic sentence. Then we've got a bit of personal insight here, which is a nice thing to have. It's a bit anecdotal evidence. So I usually spend around an hour on Saturday and an hour on Sunday on my homework. So I'm talking about my own experience. Not now, but in the past. Although some people may have packed weekends, we've got acknowledgement of another viewpoint, which is a nice thing to have again in your answer. You're showing that you've got balance. One of my friends comes to mind in particular. Again, we've got a bit of anecdotal evidence thrown in there. Most children have the time, and we've got some sophisticated punctuation. Great thing to have. So we've got a set of dashes. If a child has a lot of other things to do at the weekend, it's possible that a parent can contact the teacher directly to let them know that it might be difficult to complete all the work. Even though you've got this general viewpoint, you have a solution for people who can't necessarily conform to the viewpoint that you've put across. So again, it's a great thing to have. It shows your awareness of the situation, how some people's circumstances can be different. And then you've got a final conclusive sentence. Again, we're using those fronted adverbials. So overall, or connected phrases, it seems fair, or transitional phrases, you could call them too. Overall, it seems fair that students ought to have homework, unless there are extenuating circumstances which prevent its completion. So there are circumstances in which it could not be the case, which is a fair thing to acknowledge. Our next form of writing is a short account of an event. Describe a time when you've helped someone. Now, you might have to look through your memory a little bit to think of a time when you've actually helped someone, but it could be the smallest thing. They're not looking for you to be Mother Teresa. Yeah, they're expecting you to have maybe a single example and explain it well. If you're given a short account of an event, I like to give some context behind that event. So I start by providing some of the context. My friend needed help with long division, a particularly torturous topic in maths. I looked at some of the sums he had attempted in his book, and then tried a few of the ones he had myself, and realised that he had divided the divisor by digits of the dividend. Alright, It's very specific. Don't worry too much if you didn't get that. But if you want to watch a video on division, click here. I showed him step by step how to do the problems, and then gave him one to attempt independently. Then I carefully checked his answer, and he was correct. To ensure this successful attempt wasn't a fluke, I gave him 5 further problems and checked them with a calculator. It was satisfying, helping my friend understand something. And I also think that it helped me understand long division better. So let's break down what this answer does well. Like I said, the first paragraph I'm sort of providing the context a little bit. What was the problem? Then I went into how I helped him out, my actions that I took to help him. Then I've actually reflected on the event, showing the significance of it to him and to me. So that's how I'd generally do that. Try and be specific, try and think of something within your own experience if you've got a short account. Because I've known many students in the past, they'll veer off and they'll go into a spaceship coming down and taking them away, or just going completely away from reality, and then they really struggle to put it together. Now this one comes up a lot, and as I said at the beginning of the video, it's not answered how you'd think. A set of instructions. So the question is, write a set of instructions on how to make a sandwich. Now you'd think that you answer it by listing 1, get some bread, 2, do this, 3, do this. But actually, if you look at what I've written here, you can see it's quite different. But a child might go into it, or a student might go into it initially thinking that they just list some numbers and then say the instructions. And that's often where they go wrong. Also, something that I've noticed is that some students don't know how to do things. So they don't know how to make a sandwich, or they don't know how to boil an egg, or something like that. So there's some limits in terms of their experiences. So that's why it's really important that any candidate going for 11 plus actually has a rich body of experiences on which to draw from. So let me read this out. To start, gather all your ingredients on the kitchen counter and place 2 slices of bread on a clean plate. First, take 1 slice of bread and spread your favourite condiments using a butter knife, mayonnaise, mustard, etc. Next, add your desired fillings on top of the condiments. You can use sliced turkey, cheese, lettuce, tomato, or any other filling you like. Carefully place the second slice of bread on top of the fillings to create a sandwich. Gently press down on the sandwich to ensure all the ingredients stick together. Using a sharp knife, cut the sandwich in half if you like. Finally, you can enjoy your sandwich. So, you might notice that in this exemplar, I've used a lot of adverbials. It's a kind of mixture of timed adverbials and other sorts of descriptive adverbials like carefully. And they really like that. So try and go with that. I've also sort of separated things out into paragraphs, so there's a clear division between each of them. And then I have a conclusive sentence, which is again something that they quite like. You can see in every single writing task that we've gone through today, there's always a concluding sentence to round the thing off nicely. So finally, you can enjoy your sandwich. So that's how to tackle the different continuous writing tasks that could appear in the 11 Plus CSSE paper. Don't forget you can download your free worksheet with example questions via the link in the description, as well as full CSSE style practice papers. To watch a tutor go through an entire CSSE paper from start to finish, click here. And don't forget to subscribe.